So the first thing I'd like to do is welcome all of you who are new. I know we've got a very special guest here this evening, and I'd like to welcome Richard and your partner. Thank you. He's the man doing the filming of Isira tonight, and this film will be available on Isira's website and on Facebook. So just so you know that will be available, which is very, very special. So thank you very much. Now, for those of you who haven't, has everybody signed or in the past signed one of those forms to say that it's okay for them to be on film? Is there anybody who hasn't or who doesn't want to be on film, because we're going to need to move you away somewhere? So is there anybody who doesn't want to be on film? That's cool. Okay, great. So, and everybody signed that piece of paper. That's really important. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, just a little bit about Isira. Isira is an awakened presence, and she's here to support us all in our awakening. We're in a very, very big time, I guess, at the moment, as many of us are waking up and becoming more conscious, and she's here to support us through that process. A lot of us sometimes have questions to ask or want to come and find a space where they can just sit and be themselves and really connect with their spirit, and that's what this and their essence, and that's what this evening is all about with Satsang. What generally happens when Isira comes in the room is that you will notice that she'll walk in and she'll take a seat. She'll spend some time in silence connecting with us all. She may actually look you in the eye or, and be with you, and that can take up to 10 minutes or a bit longer. So don't be concerned about that.
Namaste. Let's take a moment to acknowledge this which we are here now. This which simply is. Here now, there's just presence. This presence of self, of awareness. This is one and the same. This one same beingness that is here. So let's acknowledge this first. That as we rest deeply into this moment here, as we open in awareness, we may recognize this nameless one, this one self. So take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Consciously feel yourself relaxing into this moment. Feel yourself consciously letting into the feeling of this moment. Dropping into the awareness of this moment, just being aware. Releasing yourself from the thought of this moment and just being available to experience it. Notice your breath. Feel the presence of life flowing through you. This breath rising and falling. Feel the flow of energy that is within your form, that is here in the space, that is alive here now. Be present to the stillness in which energy is simply flowing, rising and falling. Simply observe as thoughts may come and go. This one observing is the silence, the stillness, the ever-present, eternal consciousness. Rest ever more deeply with your breath, feeling the innermost depths of being and the all expanse of boundless being that is here. As you breathe deeply here now, acknowledge this awareness that is you. Acknowledge this energy that is you. This self is ever present. Always here now. As you acknowledge this, take a deep, full breath into your innermost center and gently affirm to yourself, I am here. Take another deep breath in. Again, acknowledging this centeredness, this awareness, this openness, this energy, this presence. Breathe deeply into your body as you acknowledge that you are here engaging in the now. Notice the calm that is abiding in this present moment. Feel yourself centered within it and open. That as you breathe now, you are aware and receptive, here in presence. Take a deep breath into your body again. Gently stretch. And open your eyes. Open them slowly and gently. As you do, allow yourself to maintain this engaging awareness of being here. Now pay attention to how you are feeling as you're just present. That's all, just being present. So, what do you notice? What do you observe with this centered state, just being centered and engaging here in this present moment. What are you observing? And if anyone would like to share, just raise your hand. So the first thing that is quite evident is a sense of silence. Look how quiet you all are.
I just feel total acceptance and there's no reaction to anything. Silence.
Mm-hmm.
So total acceptance and just no reaction to anything.
Who else notices this? Who else recognizes this sense of just beingness, this embrace? No reaction. Right. So let's have a show of hands. How many of you actually notice that? I would say we're pretty well close to everyone in the room observing or recognizing there is this sense of acceptance. Thank you for putting it in that word, because that's what it is. Existence already is its own being. You are this. You are presence, actually in every moment, the eternal moment. When you allow yourself to bring your conscious attention into this state, into this natural reality, you more readily recognize this natural reality. Actually, already here now, naturally, is complete perfection. Isn't acceptance and non-reaction a state in which all is realized as its perfect self? There is nothing to change. There is nothing to add to. There is nothing to subtract. There is just beingness. So, how many of you would recognize, observe, or admit that actually in your life you occupy quite frequently feelings of non-acceptance? And reaction? Mm-hmm. So what is the cause then of non-acceptance and reactions? What would you say is actually the cause of those conditions? Our ego, judgment. What else?
Not being in touch with our true self.
Which is?
Presence, which we were in touch with.
Right.
Ago
So even if you say, what were those other two words? Judgment and ego. Aren't they just projection and some kind of impression that occurs other than what is occurring in the moment? Isn't it? So actually the cause is what? the cause of all judgment, the cause of all non-acceptance, the cause of all reaction is actually what? Not being in the moment. Fear. Now this is interesting. You just said fear. Who remembers last satsang here? And what was the antidote of fear? And where is love? And what is love? Total acceptance. And where do you find total acceptance? Here now, in presence. Here now. So, all these notions then that you need to find a cure for your fears, for your judgments, for your reactions are based in what? Well, essentially, yes. Which is based in what? Non-presence. Non-presence. So, what is it you struggle with in relation to this concept and this reality? What is it you find you struggle with? Because let's face it, you've all heard this same truth, right? Huh? Yes? So, as I always admit, I am not actually presenting anything new to you. I am simply a state of this eternal now, making this experiencing, this inquiring, sharing this space as it is now. That's all. So what is it that you recognize for yourself that causes you a sense of struggle or conflict or contradiction?
Mind chatter.
Mind chatter.
Yes, just the thoughts overcoming and taking you out of being in the here and now.
Mm-hmm. So let's investigate this. This is actually interesting because you say mind chatter, but isn't that mental chatter actually occurring in the now also? Is there any mental chatter that is not occurring in the now? Is there anything that is not occurring in the now? So, if mental chatter is occurring in the now, is mental chatter really the problem? No.
The judgment of the mental chatter?
Projection into the past and the future? I mean, projection, moving away. Projection into the past and the future, like thinking about the past and the future?
Are you actually projecting into the past or future when there is only now?
No.
So isn't it such that even a thought, an impression that you call the past or the future is actually here now?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the problem then?
Not accepting the now. Not accepting.
Not accepting.
Not accepting, yeah.
Right, okay. So, I know some of you have heard me address this before, but we're going to address this again because this is so important for you to relax more deeply and consciously into what you really are, what reality is. It is here. You are presence. You are perfection. There's nothing but that. And that includes your mind, your process, your illusions. The idea that you're not something here now, all of this is perfect. It's actually all the dynamic of this constant eternal presence, every single aspect of it. So let's consider a particular quality that we refer to around meditative practice. We talk about silence, right? And what was the very first thing that was suggested actually causes you a feeling of conflict or contradiction regarding being present? The first thing was mental chatter, right? This is what you raised. Here's this mental chatter. It is to blame. It interrupts my presence. Does it? So,
is it the, sorry, I need to, I have a bit of trouble in my hearing. Is it our responses to that mental chatter rather than simply letting it go and getting back to being attentive, not attached, being in the present?
Right, so there's this degree of identification. Right. Now, Patanjali is well known for having stated that enlightenment occurs when you are free of your mind, to put it simply. Is it actually that enlightenment occurs when you're free of your mind, or is it that enlightenment occurs when you are free of the identification of your mind? Okay, so yes, we're talking here about responses. And letting into what is here is a response. Now let's get back to a particular quality that's referred to in terms of meditative practice. What you want to apply yourself to help bring yourself into this state of acceptance of just everything as it is. And I was making this link to what you said before about it's this mental chatter, okay? The mental chatter is to blame. Even if we say the responses to the mental chatter are to blame, typically it is thought that your practice then needs to be to silence the mind, right? That's very typical, isn't it? And you even have this desire to silence your mind, don't you? Even if you say, really, my desire is to slow down the responses to my mind, you're still desiring to silence the mind, aren't you? Why? Because you actually still believe it is the problem. It is to blame. It actually is not the problem. It is not to blame. Mental function is an aspect of consciousness. This mental chatter, it's just part of the dynamic of the mind functioning. That's a functioning tool. It's a part of creation. It is not to blame. And it's still functioning in presence, here now. So, let's then look at this notion of silence and silencing the mind. So first of all, you're coming from this basis that the mind is the problem to start with. It's the issue. So what are you going to do if that's the problem? What's your typical momentum?
Hi, Isira. Thanks for coming along here to talk with us tonight.
Oh, hello. You're welcome.
Such a pretty name, Isira. Listening to you. Just reflecting what you're saying about being and so on. Yes, I can see that acceptance within us is all important. I guess on a wider level, with outside ourselves, if there's undesirable aspects in life like abuse, suffering, disharmony, how it doesn't seem ideal to be silenced or non-reactive within these states. What do you propose around those sorts of issues?
Okay, Thank you. That's a wonderful point you're raising, and very important that we do investigate that and reflect on that more deeply. I would like to come back to that, because with what we're going to investigate and explore, we're going to flow through to then what does that mean in relation to the whole. Okay? So I will come back to exactly that point as well. So I was just suggesting that if you are already coming from this founding belief or notion that the mind is the problem and you're seeking this silencing, or you want to experience deeper silence, there's a momentum that occurs. And that is not a state of acceptance or inclusion or embrace. It is that. It is a reaction. It is pushing away. So actually, at these different levels of your conscious mind, the unconscious and the subconscious self, you're in this state of pushing away, which of course is completely opposite to being in a meditative state. That is not a meditative state. That's perpetuating this misidentification with your thoughts and this non-recognition of what you truly are, which is absolute presence. Now, if we investigate even more deeply what silence is, we discover something very interesting. What do you think silence is? Now, some of you might remember I've addressed this one before. Typically, isn't it the common theory that silence is the absence of sound? Isn't it? I've got news for you. It's not. That is an illusion. Silence is the absolute all-inclusion of all sounds. Just like white. Is white the absence of colours? No. White is the absolute inclusion of all colours. Just same with black, by the way. Just the opposite spectrum of that vibrational synergy of energies. Okay? So, silence is not an absence of sounds. It is an inclusion of all sounds. Now, that proposes a very, very different approach to meditative being, doesn't it? It actually underpins this realization that if you continue to perceive your thoughts, your mental chatter to be the problem, you will continue to reject them. You will continue to supposedly push away this noise, these stories. So we're going to come back to your point, which was, isn't it about a response? So what then is the response? When we just started this evening, we were breathing and just centering into this moment and engaging with this moment. What was happening? Allowance. You weren't directing your thoughts to go away. You weren't stopping your awareness to notice any of the sounds. There was just a complete open space of allowance. Yes?
I was just going to say.
It's on.
Mm-hmm. Just going to say acceptance to all sound and everything. It's an acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously that's what silence is, an acceptance to all sound.
And a few very rare adepts and yogis realized this. They realized the more deeply they surrendered and let into what is simply occurring, they discovered more and more subtle realms and more expansiveness of all these energies and vibrations, which isn't that what sound is anyway. It's just energies and vibrations. And that is how a yogi can hear the song of the cosmos. That is how a yogi can experience what would be referred to as silence. That is how yogis can come back to you and convey profound truths. Because in that abiding silence, all is. It is not knowledge, it is intelligence. You are here now as this intelligence, all life is. And this brings me around to the point you were raising. Thank you, beloved, for raising that point, that one may consider it's all well and fine to want to cultivate this space of being in presence and deeper silence, but actually what I'm proposing is an embrace of all as it is. And yet your question is, what then do we do in relation to those things that we do see are perhaps violating to the sacredness of life? Well, the thing is, if you are deeply present, if you are present to reality as it is, and you're engaging with it, and you're in this state of allowance and acceptance, how do you think you are going to respond to life? You're going to respond with love and awareness. Beautiful point. With equanimity. Now, if you respond with love, awareness, and equanimity, you are creating the energy of harmony and the covenant of sacredness in life. You are creating that by abiding in that state. What creates humanity? All of the yous. Every single little me, every single little I constitutes the whole of humanity. There is one true response to all that appears to be in violation. What does violation come from? I'll go back to some of your comments earlier when I said, what's the cause of you not being in presence? You know what you all said? Fear, judgment, reactions. What else? Ego. Great. So, isn't fear, judgment, reactions, and ego the activity behind all of these violating behaviors on the planet? And what is the cause of fear, judgment, reactions, and ego? Which is caused by what? Which is caused by what? Non-presence. Not abiding consciously and attentively and engagingly with reality as it is. Presence. This is all you are, ever. This is all everything is, ever, is presence. Now, that might sound like a rather grand yet simplified notion that all it needs is presence. But I will challenge every last human on this planet to that truth. That truth is unquestionable.
I agree with sort of invoking love of ourselves, and obviously, and naturally, if we love ourselves, that generates out to the world. However, I do believe that we are reactive, and that it's actually a good thing to be reactive, and to be grounded at the same time. But if we go back to the fight or flight mechanism, if someone is being violated, I can't imagine that people aren't going to feel helpless, powerless, angry, sad, or something. And I think that a yoga teacher once commented about feeling the feeling and then working through it, and perhaps we can kind of get to a stage of love. And I watched your YouTube about a past incident that happened to you, and I think people can work through and get to a stage of love. But I do believe that that naturally we do have reactions to things, but we need to probably process them.
Sure, absolutely. And wasn't that my comment earlier, that actually all of your thoughts, all of the dynamics are aspects of consciousness which are a part of the now, a part of presence. And it's about you being present to that, being available to that. I'm certainly not implying that you disregard various dynamics of what it means to be you in the now, authentically. I think it takes deeper layers of understanding this whole context. And if you understand it actually embraces the entire context of what it means to be human, to be present to your experiences, to be available to your experiences consciously, you will discover a natural progression through that. And in moments, yes, there will be reaction. And the more you are present with that, the less there will be unconscious reactions. That doesn't mean you're not meant to, for example, protect yourself in some moments. Being present does not mean you become completely passive and withdrawn. It doesn't mean that at all. It means you are lucidly conscious and you are responding in truth as it is in the moment, consciously. That's the capacity we can cultivate. Along the way, of course, no, one isn't going to be 100% conscious. Of course, there are going to be unconscious dynamics playing out. Yes. Be present, be aware, be allowing of that process. And indeed, we can talk about different ends of the spectrum. Nonetheless, your most powerful tool to embrace the process of your emotions, of reactions, of natural instincts as a human being, all of that is facilitated most deeply the more you can cultivate presence. So it is all-inclusive. It's definitely not implying that somehow you've got to do a leap and ignore all of the in-between stage of going through your emotional process and recognizing, sure, you have moments where there are reactions and moments where that reaction is meant to occur. Isn't that actually all-inclusive, ultimately? I guess what I observe is difficult for the average person to really accept is that the universe really, utterly, literally is every aspect, every expression, every dynamic. And that includes from the most loving to the most murderous, from the most gentle and subtle to the most explosive. This is the cosmos, folks. We are it. And the non-acceptance of that, or the inability to see that we are this, we are utterly everything, is where the conflict comes in regarding where humanity is at each and every stage of our evolution, and for every single condition that occurs, we project this judgment onto that as if we are failing or it is wrong or we shouldn't be a certain way. Yes, sure, we can be more loving, we can cultivate more harmony, and along the way, there is still unconsciousness, lack of presence. And as a result of that, there are conditions and symptoms that are played out. They are primarily based on fear. And that fear will produce symptoms of either violation or victimhood. And that is part of the journey. And if you have encountered a moment of being a victim or a violator, you will reconcile that and bring it into a full conscious space of development through presence. At some point, that's going to happen. Whether you get it now or not makes no difference, because at some point it is going to be brought into a conscious state. You will see it, you will know it, you will have completion with it, you will integrate it. You can't not. So really, you don't need to worry about those bits. And that's not to say it's not okay for you to have sincere and deep concern about it. That's all part of it too. Can we wait for the microphone, beloved? Thank you.
I'm asking a lot of questions. Nevertheless, I'm curious to know your worldview. Do you believe in karma? Are you a Buddhist or?
I'm not in anything.
How does your philosophy around love of oneself in the world, how does that fit in with kind of in any particular religion, or would you rather not mention that?
No, I'm not in anything. Really, there's nothing. There's just beingness. And in terms of philosophy, well, some people might say I speak different philosophical concepts. I'm simply speaking observations. These are observations through this conscious experience. It may be different for you. So I'm not, by any means, beloved, I'm going to continue before you jump in with a point. I guess your central question in all of that was karma. Well, now that's an interesting one, because yes and no. Yes, in that the energy we are manifesting as and experiencing through this human play predominantly appears to be sequential. So, you were a baby, you were a young boy, a young girl, you are a man, a woman, you will be an old man, potentially, possibly, maybe you might get run over and you walk out the front, who knows? Who knows? Nonetheless, what I'm pointing out is predominantly the human experience is sequential, right? Although there is only the now, you recognize there's this constant momentum. There is being and becoming and ending, what you see as ending. Being, becoming, ending. Being, becoming, ending. It's this constant rise and fall and transformation, continual transformation. So, it is clearly recognized in the pattern, the laws of those energies, that like energies attract like energies. So, if you have loving thoughts and are vibrating loving thoughts, those energies move forward through your state of being into becoming. So, you manifest according to a prior moment, certain types of experiences and energies. So, that's a form of karma. No, because simultaneously, consciousness, creation, and all life and all energy is instantaneous. There is no past, there is no future, there is all present. And that all present happens to contain past, present, and future. Yet is utterly instantaneous. There is only this instant and it is eternal. If there is only the instant and it is eternal,
and you are all that is, everything that ever has been and ever will be, how can there be karma? There can't be. Karma can only be in relation to a comparative point, a relative point. You here now, you there tomorrow, you there yesterday. Karma can only occur in relation to that relative perspective. And like I said, predominantly the human experience is revolving around such. In terms of the cosmos, consciousness, Brahma, the I am, whatever you want to call it, there ain't no karma. There's just being, eternal being. The absolute all in every single face, in every single possibility of expression, simultaneously, instantaneously. Which, by the way, in the same instant, is absolutely empty. There is no differentiation in that whatsoever, even though in the very same moment it appears as endlessly diverse. Sorry, am I losing you now? I'm going.
I didn't understand most of that. Sorry, but I just want to ask...
That's what happens when you ask big questions.
What about past life karma and scores to settle and stuff like that?
That comes into the perspective, as I was saying, that yes, predominantly humanity is experiencing at the level that is sequential. Do you all understand the word sequential? You all get my reference to that, don't you? So, yes, of course. Of course you are playing out through these karmic energies because you are actually a progression of energies. That's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of conditions and symptoms relating to each of those differing energies. That's all. And so, yes, you will play out various experiences that flow through particular attributes until that attribute is known and completed with through that version of experiences. And guess what? You'll go back and do it all over again anyway. Because you are eternal. You know what, most concepts of karma are based on this finite cycle, as if you go from point A, right, go, there's your piece on the board, roll your dice. Oh, you get to move 3 steps today. And that somehow you get to the end of the board and that's liberation, over and out, no more reincarnations. What? Hang on a minute. Isn't it recognized right alongside of that notion that actually the source of all of those experiences is eternal life, that we ourselves are eternal life? Well, if we're eternal life, how are we going to stop? And this eternal life includes the dynamic of manifesting in form, which is a given end of the spectrum of energy. That doesn't cease. In liberation, this condensed level of energy does not cease. You can't erase anything from the universe. So have fun while you're at it. Yes, go ahead.
So as presence, it appears that one is witnessing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in any way an avoidance of what is happening?
If it's true witnessing, no, it's not an avoidance at all. It's a disentanglement with what is happening. So in other words, you dissolve that aspect of you that has identified with it so deeply that you actually put it in some impression that says, right, that's fixed. It actually is that. Nothing is fixed. So when you witness, you dissolve that tendency.
Yes. So when one is washing up
Doing the dishes, yeah.
or anything like that,
Can you hold a bit closer?
if
to
one
me?
is experiencing or as presence, and that presence appears as all love, all peace, and one seems to be not, consciousness is not on the washing up.
Mm.
Because people often say, you've got to be right there with every single thing you do. That's presence. So I'm just
You're trying to distinguish. Doesn't mean that there's this differentiation here between perhaps being not so grounded and being grounded.
Yes.
Well, look, again, this is just different ends of the spectrum of the experience of consciousness. There are moments where you're much more expansive and the body can still be doing what the body's doing. It doesn't necessarily require cognitive attention. At the same time, there is quite some importance for, I guess, cultivating authentic self and centered presence here with life as it is. It is important to be grounded, to be aware of the moment as it fully is. So this is actually saying both things are fine. It's just that in different moments, different stages, one may be more dominant than the other. Okay? And I really want to emphasize this for you all. There is not one right or wrong. There just is all is. Okay? Your experience is being your experience at different stages and in different moments. For example, you experiencing and believing in the ego or these constructed ideas of what you think you are, what you think life is, that's not a failing. That's not a sin. That's not a fall from grace. It just is the nature of human conscious journey. At a less conscious stage, that spectrum of witnessing of the universe, if you like, it's almost like a funnel. It's very, very narrow. And for a passage, you're confined in what you think is just an individual self. Okay? You've identified with that. So it's like you're trying to view life and the universe through this. Just because for that period, that passage, your consciousness is somewhat contracted. That's all. Even when your consciousness is contracted, if you just breathe and you engage with what is here in the moment, what happens? What happens to that consciousness that usually you occupy? That is already part of the evidence that every degree from the most contracted state of consciousness to the most expansive is simultaneously present and accessible. Yes, accessible, yeah, as the experience. I'd like Richard to speak. Thank you.
I really liked how this conversation started to track in the beginning, and we said, well, you know, we recognized problems in society, and then we started to say chatter, mental chatter, judgment, so many things might be the cause of that. And then we started to say that the one thing that could be the cause of it is falling out of presence or not being in presence. And in a way, it was hard to figure that one thing, just presence, could solve every situation. And then I started to realize right then, it clicked on me that presence isn't anything, it isn't a thing, and it certainly isn't one thing, it's an activity. And so if we want to speak in the metaphor of time or when we're talking about eternity, we could still say eternity is this present moment, and even saying moment is like saying second, or like a bit. We don't really have that languaging down right. But in other words, for a million seconds, there's a million presences, because you're always doing it. So then, of course, a million presences are going to solve a million problems, because you're going to see it. Just see it right. There it is. And so then it does work, and we don't have to be incredulous about presence works, because it's not a thing. And then it came to me that, the way we learn presence is all wrong, because we learn it in meditation and stillness. We try to make the atmosphere just as if it was a thing. Life is a thing, it's a stillness. And there's no buses going by, and there's nobody chattering in my ear, no TV's on. And so we're learning it in a totally wrong way. And then we wonder, of course it doesn't work. It doesn't do much. The world is still as it is. So then how are we going to have a way to learn, a meditation, active meditation? We should be running after the bus or something like that.
Well, I'm really glad you raised that point. That's why I'm passionate about the program that I share called The Presence. Because
I hit it.
No, because actually you made a really vital point, and this links to part of the investigation I was presenting, which is silence. What is silence? You're all chasing silence, but what is silence? And so what I'm doing, in a way, is exposing exactly what you said, that if you're already coming from this notion that the mind is the problem, you've got, in a sense, a false approach to start with. And a great number of spiritual processes are based on that already. And that is not said as a judgment. That's just what it is, as it is that part of the experience, or that stage of your experience, whatever you want to call it. Nonetheless, to really experience authentically what presence is, and yes, you're right, language is very, very confined. Let's face it, language is based on dualistic terms. So really all we can do is use the best of the words we can come up with as signposts to point our way to this space or this state of being that already is. Exactly what you're saying. It's not a thing.
Well, I would go, okay, I talk a lot, so I chisel away at words a whole lot, and words can be alive. Okay, they have a certain deadness. And a lot of teachers say that words are dualistic and where they were stuck, and then they kind of shrug it off, and that's as far as it goes. But I think there can be so many precision parts. Okay, just for the very simplest, like you could say, presence is beyond mind. And everybody says, oh yeah, that's okay.
But
that sounds
presence
great.
Includes mind.
Well, okay, the present state, we're okay. That's exactly what I wanted to say. I would just change that and say presence is before mind. So mind is within
presence,
it.
Well, I guess
in
the
other
words
words, mind is within
choosing.
presence. It's before mind. Well, okay. If I said presence is beyond mind, I got to go on a journey, right? I got to go somewhere. It sounds hard. If I said presence is before mind, all I have to do is relax. Now, those two words make a huge difference.
To me, if you say presence is before mind, you're trying to unwind something, whereas if you perhaps convey presence is all-encompassing, all-being, then there's nothing to chase, there's nothing to unwind, there's nothing to undo, there's nothing to change, there's just what is here to experience, to be aware of.
I was only trying to give an example, not a teaching.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you. This is part of the sharing.
Just
Again,
saying that the
nothing
words
right or wrong.
we should work at them. Okay, another reason to work at words is because, like, words are what's hanging us up. That's where we get tangled, right? So let's iron them out a little.
Now, I'm going to pick up on your point as well, that on the one hand, yes, it's easy for most people to get hung up on words, to hook onto them as if the words are the all-important thing. The point I was getting to is that if we actually use words to open a space, something different happens. If we use words to point to an essence, something different happens. So that's my intention of sharing words, why I do continue to share words. Okay, all fine. I could just sit here completely silent with you all. Every single time. Great. Yep, you'd feel something. You'd, yummy. Nice. Would you go investigating something a little deeper perhaps? Maybe, maybe not. Words actually have the capacity to create that, to create a dynamic of exploration, engaging, entering into something deeper. That's my intention with words anyway. What a dynamic evening. So, yes.
I like the idea about presence, and it's quite thought-provoking, the idea that past, present and future is within the present, because that's quite different to how I've thought about past, present and future. I've thought about them as three distinct realities, and it's quite interesting to think of those three parts of our life as one distinct construct. And I guess it makes sense in a way that how we viewed ourselves when we were 5 in a situation that joyful or negative or whatever, how we viewed a particular thing that happened is going to be different to the construct that we put to that now, and the presence that we have with that now. So yeah, it's thank you for that idea.
You're welcome. A little suggestion of an exercise to help you all explore that more deeply or come into observation with that. Again, another example of observation I've raised before, some of you might remember, that if you, for example, you go out at night and the sky is reasonably clear, so you can view the expanse of the sky and you look at the stars. What you are actually observing, your eyes are registering those stars, right? You say, oh, there's the stars, yes? Those stars that you're observing are the stars that existed billions of years ago, not the stars that are actually existing in this here now time, if you want to refer to time. Because the light of those stars actually took millions, billions of years to travel that distance from the other side of the universe and other solar systems to your eyes. So in this now, you can literally, physically observe the past. That's just one example that gives evidence to the past occurring, always abiding in the now. If that were not a truth, it would not be occurring. It would not be possible for you to even perceive that. Now, I could go on to something of in the future, but we'll keep it simple. It's just one little activity of observation. Oh, which, by the way, as I commented before, even when you think about, you raise the point of the mental chatter, and I said, so isn't your mental chatter actually happening in the now? So there's another example. You can have a thought about the past and a thought about the future, but it's actually all occurring here now. Always now. We could also explore the quantum physics of it, which is really fascinating.
Isira, is it so that maybe we may have the experience of presence? So it's like, it seems as if there's still two. We're having the experience of presence. As that presence expands, I don't know what another word to use, expands into all that we are, then we're experiencing not only presence as one, but that one as all.
Absolutely, yeah,
So
absolutely.
it does start off as us.
As if there's still this separate individual
Yes.
self
Yes.
encountering
Yes,
presence,
and experiencing.
observing presence.
And experience.
Right.
Because it is all experience, isn't it? Experiencing it, whatever it is.
Sure, but can I just let you in on something here? Yes, certainly you will continue evolving and expanding beyond this individuated self, but primarily right here, right now, you're actually meant to be being that. You're actually meant to be having the experience of this sense of individuation, which is looking at everything. And guess what? The whole of existence is doing that right here, right now, simultaneously. That's oneself. So you are not just this one separate individual with these eyes or this witnessing. You are consciousness with billions of eyes, with billions of states, being the individuated expression. And briefly, to make comment about the quantum physics of that, that is clearly illustrated in those quantum terms, that when you come down to the emerging source of even the most infinitesimal particle, that is actually the all soup of consciousness, which contains every particle. So you contain everything within you. Every particle of you contains every particle of everything. And everything, every particle of everything contains you.
So we, as that one individual aspect of the whole, we each experience presence in our own way.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what I was saying before. You actually are presence in every moment. You might not think you are, but you actually are. You can't not be anything other. There is only presence, presencing.
Then we look through the eyes. Our eyes look as presence at everything we look at. And we hear with our ears.
So that's why in the program, The Presence, I make a point of taking you through a very conscious interaction with the senses, the 5 senses, because they are gateways of this engaging with presence. I think we have someone over here.
So just to touch back on that, we are part of everything and everything is part of us. Perhaps that's where, for me personally, I find the acceptance difficult, because I want everything that's a part of me to be accepted. But that's everything, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of acceptance. And I don't know many people, if any, that have that ability to accept everything because it's part of us. And that's where I'm in the tug of war.
Yes, I understand. And as I conveyed earlier, that is not a failing on your part. It is simply the state and stage of the experience you are having. And that occurs as a symptom of how identified you are with individuation. As that begins to expand and dissolve, that sense of boundaries and parameters, there can be nothing but complete and utter acceptance of all. And
it's a work in progress.
Right. It's just a journey. It is just an occurring. That's all. You know, creation is nothing other than occurring process. And it's all fine. It's fine that you feel that way at the moment. Like I say, that's just a symptom of this particular state and stage or degree of conscious vibration that you are encountering at the moment. And, you know, just a little comment also in relation to all of this, whatever I'm sharing, reflecting back to you. I indicated before that it's not about philosophy, it's not about knowledge, it's about observations. It's about expression from the states of experience. So it's not something I've learned, it's not something I've studied, although there are many people who may speak conceptually in very similar terms. I choose to share with you from experience. And I encourage you to speak truth from your experience. So I deeply acknowledge you for what you just shared, and you and all of you. I acknowledge you and honour you as you are here now, forever here now. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for being open to sharing transparently. The more we do, the more we come together as a community and we share transparently and authentically, and we allow consciousness to be a part of this, the more connectedness we do create, and that will cultivate another form of acceptance. So thank you.
I thought I had a pretty great insight when you said there's 1,000 eyes looking through
Billions.
us. Billions, right. Because we all know that we don't notice everything, right? And that's real clear. And then you call that the unconscious because we're not conscious of it, right? And then we have another word called collective unconscious. But what we're unconscious of, we don't know the boundaries of it. We don't know if we're 10% conscious and 90% unconscious, or we don't know if we're 1% conscious and 999% unconscious, or let's just call it we don't notice. It doesn't mean it's a failing on our part. And that's the collective, and we are all one. And when we start noticing that, then it's not unconscious anymore, but it's just obvious oneness.
Right. And what if you bring into that observation as well that actually in every single moment, every single part of the universe is being experienced and observed. You don't have to do that. You may be unconscious to a given part of existence as it is, but maybe this part of you is actually conscious and observing it. And this comes back to that you are actually not inherently this individual body mind, this singular point. You are consciousness with all of these individuated expressions. So actually, if you look at the collective unconscious or the collective consciousness or the collective mind, what you discover is it's one self with billions of minds. It is one self observing the universe from every single angle and perspective and dimension simultaneously. So that part of you is observing and perceiving in another way that you are not conscious of, but that part of you is conscious of it.
He's actually created his kitchen for me.
Right. So, wow, I'm glad you said that, because, you know, the whole issue of jealousy is so ludicrous. Because, you know, you might want to covet someone else's experience. You secretly wish it was yours. It is yours. They are the you being that experience. So jealousy is completely irrelevant. What a celebration then.
I have a question, and I'm sure it's connected with all of this. It's a bit like quantum physics, but the sense of time and my awareness of time just seems it's speeding up, and is this all us all becoming one and my awareness of that, or is it just completely another subject?
It's probably a big one.
Yeah. It's bothering me lately because I just think I'm thinking there's something going on,
So isn't it such, though, that what you're saying is this sense of speeding up is actually that there appear to be less gaps and distinctions between a past moment and a future moment. And your projected idea that things is speeding up is actually just a slowing down of those gaps and differentiations. What you discover is that actually there's just a continuum. And if you kind of shift your perspective on that and you relax into it, then again you drop away from this whole illusion of time anyway. That time is even real. Time is real? Can anyone tell me here if they've ever been anywhere else other than in the now?
Yeah, that's what it came down to. I thought, well, all I can do is be in the now.
Guess what? You actually are. No. Well, like I said, what a dynamic evening. Perhaps we will share again the space of being present. And this time now, perhaps you can even intensify or deepen this aware state, that you're just so aware that you are vividly, lucidly here, this presencing, this being. And allow yourself to experience that awareness through your senses, through everything that is occurring here. That doesn't mean you have to get it all, just however it's occurring for you. Okay? So again, we'll just begin with the breath. Bring your attention to the breath. Take a deep full breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just feel yourself really letting into this moment, energetically and consciously letting into this moment. And as you breathe, you're able to rest with this moment and feel the flow, the rise and the fall just as it's occurring.
Now, as you are present, again, take a deep breath in. Breathe into your innermost center and acknowledge this natural state that is yourself here now, that is all of life. Acknowledge the experience of being attentively aware of this nature. Acknowledge the feeling of calm and centeredness and openness that occurs as you engage consciously with this presence. As you acknowledge this state of awareness, and the occurrence of existence, being, always being, take a deep breath in. Gently affirm to yourself again, I am here. Breathe in as you feel the flow of energy, this continuum of your being. Feel it alive and flowing through your body. Feel it all open, boundlessly expansive as this awareness. As you feel this centeredness, this aliveness, openness and connectedness now, breathe into your heart center and take a moment to give thanks. To give thanks for the perfection that is life, always, forever being. With this gratitude now, take a deep breath into your body. Feel the love, the grace, the light of consciousness and the aliveness flowing through you. Breathe deeply as you feel this centeredness and openness. As you breathe into your body now, gently stretch and open your eyes. So let's finish our evening with the acknowledgement and recognition that we started the evening with, which is this readily accessible state of acceptance, this calm, this awareness that really knows underneath everything all is okay. You may forget that in moments, and that's okay too.
And you may feel as if you have a long way to go before you attain complete acceptance of everything, or before you feel that you really abide deeply, attentively to this forever presence. That's okay too. And along the way, it's good for you. Know that, even in the most simple terms, to bring yourself consciously into presence, this which is simply here, is good for you. It's calming. It slows down the cortisol, that reaction of the body to all the stress and the reactions that have been going on in your life. It slows that down. It delivers all of these wonderful hormones that are healing and soothing, that cultivate a feeling of happiness and aliveness. That is something very worthy, even in its most simple terms. Because as the human experience, there's enough stress going on, isn't there? So even if you put a circle around just that, and you acknowledge that and recognize for yourself, you deserve this calm, you deserve this well-being in your life, then that can become perhaps a more gentle inspiration and motivation for you, rather than the judgmental part of your mind poking at you, going, look, you're being judgmental, you're not in the present moment. Just that gentle reminder that you would like to feel well. And presence can provide that for you. Of course, it can open up a whole lot of other benefits, but that's a good place to start. So, once again, my acknowledgements to each of you, to all of you, and thank you, Richard from Chicago, NNH TV, never not here, right, always present. Thank you so much for being your adventure and sharing with us, and of course sharing with the world, because through Richard's broadcasting, he shares with the world various interviews, which is about exploring consciousness, I guess, exploring life through conscious perspectives. So that's a great gift, thank you. And of course to all of you dear, beautiful friends, beloveds who support and assist in being able to provide this space and to share this space. You've all put in so much time and energy and effort in so many ways, behind the scenes as well as what's seen, and it's deeply acknowledged and appreciated, those of you who contribute your time, because it really is a very precious sharing, the opportunity to be together in this way. And of course, thank you all just for being you. Well, not just. Thank you. With absolute love. Namaste. Joy, joy, joy.
For those of you who would like to spend a moment with Isira, that's possible